Welcome back to another episode of Causonomics. This will be our last session for the year, and really this week the guest needs no introduction, the brilliant and fabulous Sir John Timpson, whose reputation as head of the UK's leading retail businesses certainly precedes him. I'm very excited to be able to sit down with Sir John today to discuss what keeps Timpson's regularly at the top of the UK Customer Satisfaction Index, and how his unique management style has empowered generations of employees to provide differentiating levels of service for his own organisation and for the many customers he serves. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. I am so delighted that Sir John Timpson is joining us. I've had the privilege of knowing Sir John a few years now. Let's just have a little look at his illustrious career. Sir John joined the family footwear business William Timpson back in 1960, and since then has had a whole host of different roles. He became managing director of leather and fur retailers back in 1975, was appointed managing director of William Timpson as well. In 1983, you led a massive buyout of the company. And in 1987, you sold your shoe shops to rival retailer George Oliver to concentrate on developing the shoe repair and key cutting business. But also this business has diversified into engraving, watch, mobile phone repairers, dry cleaning and photo processing. So a whole range of different things. But I think probably what you are most famous for, Sir John, is how you've chosen to run that business and how much respect and care you put into your workforce, which actually I think is probably one of the biggest things that leads us to today. We know, don't we, Sir John, that there's a massive connection between employee engagement and customer satisfaction, which is why Timpson are rated as the highest company in the UK Customer Satisfaction Survey, according to our July survey back in 2024, and you are consistently in the top 10. What do you think differentiates your experience and why this has been so different for you?
I have no doubt that the thing that has made the biggest difference goes back about 28 years ago, 30 years ago, something like that, when we were thinking really hard about how we could improve our customer service. Because in our business, well, I think every business, but certainly in our business, because we're a service retailer, customer service is the most important thing. And basically, to attract customers, we need to do two things. One is to do a good job because we're providing a service like key cutting and watch repairs and so on. And secondly, to actually give an amazing service. And luckily, at that time, I discovered the only way to give an amazing service is to trust the people who serve the customers to do it the way they want. Now, there was evidence of that, which I'd already seen but never really took much notice of, from a book about Nordstrom US department stores, who had this fantastic reputation for service based on the fact that their sales clerks literally went the extra mile, did things off their own bat for colleagues, and that's how they got their reputation. But in the middle of that book was a management chart, which was upside down. The people who were serving the customers were right at the top, running the business, making the money, and everyone else in the organisation was there to provide support, to make their life easier so that they had their time and they were given the ability to use their initiative to look after customers. And that, suddenly realising that, started the whole thing off. Giving our colleagues the freedom to do what they wanted was much better than giving training courses, having little notices in the back stockroom, having pet words they've got to say. Leave them to it, then you've got a chance of providing great service.
And you've really led on that mantra, haven't you? And really encouraged individuals to bring themselves to work as well. You know, we've talked a bit about this link between higher levels of employee engagement and higher levels of customer satisfaction. As you said, the upside down management aspect of that. But also, you know, your passion and your care for seeing service as a profession, because, you know, at the Institute, you will know that we've been challenging this and campaigning to get people seen in customer service as a profession, and particularly amongst younger people. What do you think we could be doing more in the UK to really drive forward the service profession? And what has your learnings been from working over the years to ensure that we could achieve that?
I think it's always got to be centred on people. There is a danger that you start to talk about customer service being a science. It isn't a science, it's an art. And where I've seen technology used to improve service, and it can do, I mean, we've all experienced very fantastic deliveries from Amazon and these sort of things, but where it's used without having thought about people, it actually isn't always great customer service. For instance, I think that what's been happening in supermarkets with self-checkouts, all that the businesses are doing is they're getting the customers to do the work. And I can't see that that's great service. And also I think that any company that puts all its customer complaints department, or whatever they might call it, to the stage where you cannot talk to that business and talk to a real person, I think you've lost the idea of great customer service. So I think it still comes down, even in a big technological age with AI and the rest of it, it's all about people.
And investing in your people, understanding your people, being clear about their progression, opportunities, and empowering them to make the right decision. And given you have, for a long time now, put a special emphasis, obviously, on ex-offenders too. Tell us a little bit more about that, how you brought those in and what started that. So arguably, that was quite a brave thing to do initially in terms of looking to recruit from that base. So tell us a little bit about that, Sir John.
It was very brave, and it wasn't me that was being brave, it was my son James who just started to run the business. And like a lot of things, it was a bit of luck. By chance, he happened to be going to a social event at a local prison, Thorne Cross near Warrington, and part of the evening was to have a tour around the prison taken by one of the inmates, and Matt, the inmate that took James round, impressed him so much he said, "Here's my business card, when you get out, get in touch, I'll find you a job." That's how it all started. Now we have 12% of our workforce who've got prison experience, about 650 of them right now. But we still apply exactly the same principle in recruiting them as we do anyone else. And that main principle is we only want to employ people with the right positive personality. That is absolutely key to everything we do, particularly the customer service bit. You won't be able to do it unless you make sure you're full of people who rate 9 or 10 out of 10. And I'm not talking about their qualifications or their past career. I'm just talking about them as people. Are they Mrs. Happy, Mr. Keen, Mr. Positive? Or are they Mr. Grumpy, Mr. Dull and Mr. Scruffy?
Okay, so how you turn up, how you show up, the ability to be positive is a really important attribute that you would look for, Sir John, in terms of how you develop and grow your people.
Yeah, we aim to have a business full of really nice, positive people who enjoy talking to others, enjoy working with others, enjoy coming to work, and also enjoy their time outside work. People who actually spread goodwill. They don't suck the energy out of people. It makes such a big difference having the right people in the first place.
The right attitude. And the old mantra about hiring for attitude and you can teach skills is really, really important here. That's what you're talking about, Sir John, making sure that you attract the right people into your organisation that really want to serve and to help one another in order to build the right outcome for the customer, but also for the business too. And I think that is really clear. Now, you've had a pretty interesting and exciting year. A very busy year for the Timpson Group as your son stepped down to take on the ministerial role in terms of the new government, and therefore you're back at the helm leading that business. How does that feel this time around? Is there much that's changed since you were last running the business?
Well, first of all, let's make it quite clear. I do not do the day-to-day stuff. I'm a chairman, just somewhat more executive than I have been over the last few years. Business has changed a lot in the 20-something years since I was last very executive. We've now got 2,200 shops or something like that, whereas before we had about 500. We've now got Max Spielman, Snappy Snaps, Johnson's the Cleaners, and the Watch Lab and so on. We've got lots of other businesses. But what hasn't changed is we run them all on the same principles. It's all what I call upside-down management. That actually makes it a lot easier to come in and hopefully keep things going, because we've got a team who are used to getting on with it and have got the ability to use their initiative. So the upside-down management thing, it isn't just a question of trusting the people in the front line to serve customers. We also trust everybody within the business to do their job in the way they know best. So that's helped a lot. And also we've gone through all the pains that any company would have to go through to get what I call upside-down management going in the first place.
So let's talk about some of those pains that you have to go through. What's your advice in terms of any organisation that is serious about upside-down management?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is to make sure that your middle managers understand that they've got to do their job differently. Being a boss is a completely different thing in our world than most of the rest of industry and business. Very simply, we have two rules as far as frontline staff is concerned. One is look the part, wear the uniform, turn up on time. Rule 2, put the money in the till. But there's a third little rule that comes in for our managers, wherever they might be in the business. You can't tell anyone else what to do. So there are no orders. Now, as soon as you've said that, it makes bosses act in a different way. You can't run your department by issuing a load of orders. So what you've got to do is to help the members of your team to become the very best they can be by taking the obstacles out the way, providing them with the tools to do the job, lots of training and lots of support, which is often psychological support, helping their well-being in all sorts of ways. So we've got a lot of, particularly out in the field, our bosses spend a lot of time helping out with people who might have difficult problems at home. It might be to do with debt, it might be to do with divorce or bereavement or stress, all these things that get in the way, they're there to help. So that's a big difference. And the second thing, we got rid of head office. We didn't get rid of the building, that's where I am now. But we got rid of the name. We didn't get rid of the people are still there, but we got rid of the name because we don't want to have an office that thinks it runs the business. The office is there to support everyone in the business to do their job easier and better. We don't have people in an office coming up with more strategies, more processes, more procedures. That's not what they're there for. They're there to do things that make life easier, not to get in the way of the people who are working in our shops.
That's a really interesting concept because, as you said, it's upside down management, upside down pyramid. Everything doesn't come into a hierarchy. It's a real sense of what you're saying is the organisation is serving those to be the best that they possibly can in the field and eradicating those obstacles that get in our way. Surely, though, Sir John, there must be times when you're thinking, we've got to have some form of consistency here, because if you are, ceding everything to the decision, so how do you put those structures or boundaries in place, Sir John? Because everything can't be a free-for-all.
By doing what I've already said. If you consistently employ people who've got the right personality, the 9s and the 10s of this world, I'll guarantee that you'll get a consistent level of service. I hear that myself. People quite often say, I've been to your shop in wherever it is, and bang, we've got over 2,000 of them. And they invariably talk about the people. They don't talk about the job that was done or what the shop looked like. They say, and I met a fantastic man there, girl there, whatever. And that comes really from the fact that we impress on the people in the shop they can do whatever they want. In fact, over 4% of our transactions are done for free. Now, we don't have a rule that you have to do jobs for free, but we just have no rules, just saying you're allowed to do what you want. And one of the best things they can do is if it's a small job, or if it's a job for someone who's going to a funeral, whatever it's for. There are times when it's absolutely right to say, have it on me. That's powerful service. And right when we started this, 30 years ago, we did say you are allowed to spend, anyone is allowed to spend £500 to settle a complaint without talking to anyone else in the business. So if a customer comes in, you think it's justified, there's 500 quid you can give away just like that. We've actually changed it to £1,000 now. So that's emphasising the fact that people have got the freedom. There's none of this, I've got to check with head office, my manager's out at the moment, can you come back? No, straight away you can handle it. Now that's what I mean about giving people the freedom to give what many people would think is amazing service.
And also, by doing that, which is also very clever, you're not steeped in loads of bureaucracy, that's not going up and down the chain, it's not taking more time. So you must be much more effective as an organisation, as well as being more efficient in terms of the delivery of that. So I can see that very clearly.
I mean, one thing we did a long, long time ago, and we had EPOS, electronic point of sale tills. I kicked them out because they were determining what was happening in the shops. They said what the price had to be. I wanted the people in the shop to be able to change the price if they thought that was the right thing to do. So ever since then, the mantra in our IT department is to tell them they've always got to be doing things which make life better for the people who serve customers. So instead of coming up with ideas that get in the way.
So it's really clear to me, and you make it sound very simple, but I know it is not simple, but about inverting that pyramid, enabling your people genuinely. Everyone is serving somebody who's serving a customer. So the whole kind of thinking in the organisation is outside in. How do we make this more effective for the customer? And therefore, how do we empower our people so that they can be the very best they can be in terms of serving that customer? But, you've done that consistently well. You've also got the profits and the returns that demonstrate that across a whole range of different organisations as well. So it's not just the Timpson brand, as you said, it's not the wider set of that brand. So why don't more organisations do this? I mean, it seems a very logical and effective way of running business. So why don't we do that more, Sir John?
Probably because they just haven't either got the courage to do it. In big businesses, they don't like the idea of getting rid of head office. That's a big one, especially for sort of fairly senior managers who've got the control. They want to be able to say, I'm in control of the business. And they want to tell people what to do. And also, it's quite hard work to start with. It's not hard work when you've got it going, but to actually turn the whole thing upside down and change the whole way that your middle managers do the job of being a boss, that's quite hard. And so we've spent a lot of time, and we still do spend a lot of time, preaching upside down management as our culture. And everyone who joins us, hopefully within the first 6 months, comes on a 24-hour course up in Manchester, simply talking about the culture. And then I'm seeing some people later on today, we now run a degree course. We talk about the Timpson University, and the course is on upside down management. They spend a year doing projects, and they're going to make some presentations today, all about how we can make it work. So it gets ingrained in the culture. And also, we don't recruit people from outside the business in junior or senior management roles other than specialist roles. Because if general managers come to us, they try and tell us how we should be running the business because they don't understand quite how we can get to where we are.
So you really do see this as a profession, and to grow your people from inside the organisation, and they become the future managers and leaders of the organisation as well. And I love the Timpson University. You'll be delighted to know, Sir John, and I'll come and talk to you about this. One of the things I want to get off the ground is a service university. as well, which puts as much emphasis on customer service, because we do see this as such an important to the economy. Just on that, Sir John, I mean, you're a prolific writer as well. I mean, and you've written in the business world and in lifestyle with some great advice penned over the years. But as we enter the new year, because we're going to be entering 2025 very soon, and with the current economic challenges that we're seeing, what's your top advice for business? What would you think that we should be trying to do more of as businesses, other than top-down management and enabling our businesses?
One thing that you could make us right, we've suddenly had a lot more costs lumped on us through national insurance costs, minimum wage. First mistake is to try and expect the business to make exactly the same amount of money as it made last year. It could do, but don't aim to do it, because if you're not careful, you'll try and get there by cutting out costs which you need. So don't do that. But still aim for excellence. We don't tend to have profit targets. If you run the business really supremely well and give great service, you'll make the money. That's generally the way it seems to go. But one thing that every business needs to do, and it is probably a good time to do it, and I think every 3 years this is an exercise, we call it cash for growth, which is looking hard at the business to see where we're wasting a bit of money. Because a long time ago, there was a book written called Parkinson's Law by a guy called Northcote C. Parkinson. And basically his theory was that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. And also that if someone comes into a business, they will gradually expand their department by adding a couple of people working for them, and then they have to have a couple of people working for them, and so it goes on. Unless you nip it in the bud by every so often having what I call a cash for growth thing. So don't wait until you're in a real bother and you're running out of cash. Do it now. When things are going well, make sure that you're not becoming top heavy, you've got people you don't need. And the other thing I would always do, and I think the minimum wage is a good prompter for this. If these people are, which they may well be, worth more money than they were last year, make sure that they really are worth it. And make sure they are all worth a 9 or 10 out of 10. Because one of the problems that a lot of businesses have, which particularly affects their level of service, is they've got too many passengers. They've got people who aren't really up to the mark, and they won't face up to it. And they're not just damaging their profit in that, and the level of service, they're actually undermining the whole culture of the business, because they're letting down the people who are really good by expecting them to work alongside somebody who isn't anything like as good as them and actually doesn't respect the business as much as they do. So if you want to look after your good people, make sure you have a word with the people who aren't so good. Explain why it's not working for them. They made a mistake, we made a mistake, and help them find the job of their dreams so they can spend their happiness elsewhere.
You know, that is, again, brilliant advice, Sir John. So what we're very clear about is getting out of the way of your people so that they can do the great job. But holding people to account, I can hear that. Making sure you recruit quality and really invest in your people. And also holding people to account and helping them to own the issue or the problem that they might have. Because too many organisations, you are right, aren't prepared to make some of those tough decisions. And I really like the point that you've made that well-run businesses do this all the time. It's just the kind of a way that they run their businesses. You don't wait for a crisis in order to have to improve the business, whether that is effectiveness or efficiency through that. And that is really clear, Sir John, about you setting standards. And you adhere to those standards and you encourage people. But you also develop them. You've talked about that as well, and give them the opportunities to prove to you and to themselves and to their colleagues that they can be brilliant.
Another thing which is very important, in times when the cost base is going up, like it is at the moment, one thing you don't do is penalise your colleagues. Don't cut the costs of looking after your colleagues. In fact, 2 days after the budget, I sent out a video. I was doing a video every week which talked about the extra cost of national insurance, the minimum wage. And then I said, but I can promise this will not affect any of the benefits that you're getting, such as the fact how people get their birthday off, and we've got lots of holiday homes, and we have a special Dreams Come True scheme which does lots and lots of things for people. That will continue because it's most important to look after the people who are looking after the customers. Don't take them for granted. Always have ways of saying thank you and well done.
And mean it, which you do, Sir John. Great examples there that you've talked about. And I love the fact that you look for those efficiencies elsewhere and you constantly run a well-run business. There's always incremental improvements the whole time. You don't wait for that crisis to happen. I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask you was what you thought about the budget, because you are right, there's a lot of noise in some respects, but also some real issues and challenges facing business. So your advice around that is really about making sure we're doing everything we can at all times to run the business well. In terms of, if we turned a little bit to outside of work, I find it incredible that you have fostered over 90 children and written about your learnings and how that experience has shaped you. And you talk about that in terms of the made around the style for children and how that has been really important to how you treat and develop people more broadly, about the learnings that you have had from that. Is there any other advice that you think that we could take from that experience?
Well, first of all, it wasn't me that fostered 90 children. It was my late wife, Alex, and I was sort of doing a little bit in the background. But I watched her do it rather than did it. It was fascinating, seeing so many different characters. And a lot of them had started with a disadvantage in life, which had left them not to trust the other people. And why should they trust? They've been let down by their birth parents or whoever's been caring for them in the first place. So why should they trust anyone else? And so they tended to set out on life with lacking in confidence and lacking in trust. We actually discovered in time that, we're going back to this upside-down management thing, but because we give people freedom, when they get to be a shop manager, it's their shop, because they can do what they like with it. That's very good for people's well-being. They're being trusted, and that makes a big difference. Because we experienced so many children in different circumstances, the phrase that we discovered in the end, Alex and I, is the most important question to be able to answer is, why do these children behave the way they do? They weren't made like that. They're not actually naughty. They behave like that because of the way the circumstances they faced early in life, which made them untrusting of the outside world. You've got to remember that, and so the more mentoring, support, and so on that you can give them, showing that there is someone out there that trusts them, the better their life will become. You can reflect that in business. In fact, because we got involved with a local primary school, I got the head of that school to come to our leadership course and learn the way we run the business, and he's turned not only that school into a great success, but he's become an academy, and he's now got 12 schools he runs in an upside-down management sort of way. So it isn't just about shoe repairers and key cutters. It's something that can be used right through the world of employment. It's a lesson that I just wish was learned in government, for instance. It's one of the core things which I think is behind the problems of social services, particularly children's social services, because the social workers are not trusted to do the job the way they know best, to the extent that less than 20% of their time is spent with children and families. The other 80% is spread between a few training courses, a bit of sickness, and an awful lot of form filling and administration, because the local authority, whoever they work for, needs to know that everything's being done okay, so they call it safeguarding, but actually they're safeguarding themselves so no one can blame them for what's going wrong. And in doing that, in not trusting the people who are doing the job, they actually don't look after the children as well as they should.
Do you know what, Sir John, I'm very struck by a couple of things. You've talked about trust quite a lot in this conversation. and how you trust people to get on and do the right thing. But you've also talked about recruiting the right people. You've also talked about getting out of their way. So this is not about form filling. This is not about rules. This is not about process. But you also do create those processes and rules. But it feels to me in a much more enabling and ownership way. What you've really talked about is getting people to own the issue and the problem and then do the right thing. And more in business, we see that definitely at the Institute, those organisations that are run by doing the right thing, genuinely engaging, and we talk about the service profit chain, which is about engaging your colleagues, because if they're engaged and they feel really connected to the purpose of your organisation, they're much more likely to do the right thing, have discretionary effort, make sure that they do that. You also talked a little bit, I talk about it being relevance and about making sure what you're doing is relevant. And your customers will tell you whether that is relevant or not. And then about being outcome focused. And I think I'm really struck by, and I'm pretty sure if I asked you the next question, which would be around what one thing would you ask government to do, it might be about less bureaucracy and less form filling and a bit more focus on the outcome that you're trying to generate, is where I might ask. But if you could be in government for one day, what would you ask? What would be the big things that you would like?
Well, you've touched on that I think the government, whatever the government, doesn't matter what colour it is, but they must understand that they do not run the country. We run the country, they're there to help us do it and pull all the levers that make it easier for us to do the jobs. And too much, you think you've got a government, a civil servant, whatever it is, who believes they run the country. I once spent it was a week, in what was called the DTI, I don't know what it's called now, I've probably gone back to it, the Department of Trade and Industry. And I finished up in the cafe there, about my third or fourth day, with a couple of fairly senior civil servants. I said, well, what do you do? And they say, we do policy. That's what we do policy. So they're setting the policy of the way everything's going to run, and that inevitably leads to procedures which then you're meant to follow to make sure you stick to the policy. That's not the way to work it. That doesn't give people freedom. It ties them up, so they've got to do it the way someone else has decided. So that's what I would do. I'd loosen it up and understand that government is there to support the country to do things to make things better, rather than to tell the country what they've got to do to make things better.
And what you're really talking about is a mindset, about an approach that we might take in terms of thinking about outcomes-based, thinking about less rules and regulation and more focus on trying to do the right thing within, as we've said, those guidelines and those approaches, and encouraging anyone really that is leading, whether that's a government or whether that is a business, a school, public sector, to really think about what is it that I am trying to deliver and how am I trying to deliver that and how do I enable our people to deliver that in the best way that we can. But you've also got to have the right motivation in the first place, haven't you? We have to have people leading us that actually do care about making the world a better place. And you talked about that with the fostering that you have done with your people. You passionately care about making things right for your employees and right for your customers. And I think that comes through very strongly, Sir John.
Yeah, I think we're lucky that we found a way to do it. This upside-down management thing is... I mean, if it was the obvious way to do it, there'd be more businesses running things like we do. But it does take a leap of faith. It did take us 5 years to get it going. But we believed in it all the way because, actually, helped a lot by my grandfather, who I didn't know particularly well, but I knew well enough. And he ran our mainly shoe shop business in those days, in the 1920s, 30s, into the 40s. He was a real people person. He spent much of his time going around the country, visiting the shops, not talking all about shoes and window displays, but talking to them about their lives. He'd want to know about their families. He'd want to know whether they'd been on holiday. That sort of thing. Of because he was interested in people. That example, I think, has been something that's made a big impression on us. And we've tried to have people who are running our shops. Now, we've got a lot of people in area teams who all start as apprentices, and we drill in them that a big part of the job is to look after your people. And they really are almost social workers in the middle of the business.
That's a really interesting phrase, Sir John. And I think what fascinates me with that is we're not talking about more process from HR. What we're talking about is people caring about the people that they work with and for, and asking the right questions and feeling that connection. It's not about, doing lots of different initiatives. It's about really understanding what makes your people tick and what's important to them.
It won't surprise you to hear that we don't have a department called HR. Ours is called colleague support, because they're there to help the colleagues out in the field, particularly those who are doing management roles, helping those colleagues to know what to do to handle the colleagues that they're looking after. So colleague support, not HR.
And again, upside down management, all of your departments, everything you have designed is to enable people to serve better. And it's true, isn't it? When we try to sort something out for somebody, and when we've managed to do that, we generally feel better as human beings too. It's something that doesn't escape me when we're in full throw, trying to make an outcome better for someone, trying to resolve a problem, trying to help people. I always, when I listen to my colleagues, when they tell me about what they've managed to do, they're really proud of that. And it makes us all feel a lot better when we try to get a better outcome.
We encourage every one of our people in shops to, every day, perform at least one random act of kindness, which will cost us money, you think, but actually will make us a lot of money at the end of the day. Because if you've got the right attitude of seeing how you can help particular customers, maybe by changing the price a bit or saying, no, I'll deliver it later or whatever, that random act of kindness does you a lot of good. You're quite right, it makes you feel better, but it makes the business better because those customers will go and talk about it. If we're talking about great customer service, that's what great customer service is, beyond even the most efficient IT system. But that personal added approach, that's what excellence is.
That connection and that really understanding in that moment what that customer needed, and you've empowered your people to be able to do that, to really hear and to really understand in order to deliver, as you said, something that's exceptional, something that only a human being can actually deliver. Sir John, I could talk to you all day and all night. I think you've got so many fascinating stories, history, everything else that you have done. And I've taken away quite a lot from this conversation, just in terms of being brave, really thinking about what does upside down management really mean in an organisation. And even if organisations aren't prepared to do the whole that you have done, just taking some of those lessons about recruiting the very best that you can, thinking about how you look after your people, holding them to account, but enabling them to also take ownership to make the difference. All of those things, whatever role we have in whatever size organisation we are working in, all of us as managers and leaders can do that. So you've given us some great initiatives and some great ideas about how we do try to drive our businesses forward. So I'm going to ask you one last final question, if I may. What is the one change you would like business leaders to implement today in terms of really driving forward the future of customer service, Sir John?
I think I'm going to pick one that really works for us. We don't do surveys, we don't do market research or anything like that, but we have one measure which actually does tell us how well we're running the business, which in the end will reflect on our customer service. And it's what we call our happy index. Very simply, we ask every colleague just one question. It's not a complicated survey, only one question, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with the help that you get, the support that you get from your team leaders? That's it. And that tells us whether the people in our team are actually carrying out the upside down management and they are looking after the people in their team. Where we've got a really good happy index, I tell you, we'll have great service and great sales.
Sir John, as always, a massive pleasure. Thank you so much for giving us your time today, for your wisdom and your thoughts. And it is very clear that you have lived this and done this for a long time. And as you have said, have a very effective business, happy staff and happy customers, which is a great combination, I think, for any organisation and anything that we could aspire to achieve and do. Sir John, thank you. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
What a fantastic set of insights into the world of such a successful businessman, and also an interesting and impactful personal life too. Thanks as always for listening. We'll be back with another Causonomics in the new year with some fantastic new guests. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and holiday break and a very happy new year. Thank you.